Let's look at Mother 3, or as it was going to be released as Earthbound 64 trailer. So after Mother 2 came out, they started developing Mother 3 because the game sold really well in Japan, and they were releasing it in the US, so they were super excited about this franchise. So they started working on Mother 3 for the Super Nintendo, or Super Famicom, and they got a little ways into it. They wrote Itoei wrote essentially the story, but then it wasn't going to come out in time for the Super Famicom, the same sort of problem they've had the whole time with this franchise. And they ended up moving it to the Nintendo 64, which that was in development for 4 or 5 years before it was finally playable at a Nintendo event. And here's some footage from it. It's low bit rate, but you get the idea. It was a 3D game. You clearly played as some sort of cowboy, but apparently the team was having a lot of trouble actually making this game function. And they needed a lot of help from the rest of Nintendo. So like the Pokemon Snap people, or Pokemon Stadium, I can't remember. One of the Pokemon side story game teams rolled on and started trying to improve the graphics and performance. And they couldn't really get there. So eventually this game just got canceled. It was playable, as mentioned, on the show floor at one Space World, which was like a Nintendo-only E3 that they used to put on. It was super sad. At one point, the fan community, like there are two sort of big fan communities for Earthbound, which are the Starmen.net guys and the Earthbound Central people, who've sort of collected a lot of this data. You can read a lot of stuff about these games if you care. But Starmen.net guys are great because when Mother 3 eventually did come out for the Game Boy Advance, which by the way was a surprise. No one knew that was coming. They released Mother 3, and then the Starmen.net community sort of rallied around it and figured out that Nintendo wasn't ever going to localize this game, so they took it on themselves to do so. Eventually, they did release a fan-made patch. Clyde Mandolin was the principal translator, and they went on to start Fangamer, where you can buy nice products. So they released, around the time that their patch was finished, they released a strategy guide for Mother 3. Sort of skipping around without playing the game for a second, but it's nice to look at this stuff. So they loved the strategy guide for Earthbound. It comes in a false cover, like a Back to the Future 2 kind of book. In case you get discovered with this, the Pork Army will know that you're studying their stuff. But they made everything, they tried to model a lot of stuff in here off of the actual official Nintendo one. This was a labor of love. It was one of the first products that Fangamer ever sold, and I really find it special. I love they did clay models for a lot of the characters and things, and it's super witty writing. And an interesting thing about Mother 3 is it had more time and localization than Mother 1 or 2 did. So while there are a couple patchy spots in the localization, it's actually the best localized of the 3 games. But it came out on Game Boy Advance. So I pre-ordered Mother 3 from Lixang or PlayAsia or whatever import shop was popular in 2006, and this was what the collector's edition came in. It came in like a brick box that had a copy of the game, which is super in a special tan ugly box, but it has a nice manual. So I'm gonna take this out, because it also came with a custom Game Boy Micro, which is super adorable. I have another Game Boy Micro that I use largely to play games on, so this is weird collector me opening the boxes on my stuff. Oh look, I love this. Welcome to Mother 3 World. Those are, that's text that appears at the beginning of the game. It was the slogan for this game, at least on Itoi's website and the marketing materials. And here is the Mother 3 Game Boy Micro, which says Mother 3 on it. And it looks like you've been holding it for a long time. Like you wanted it to look all corroded and rusted up. Or maybe corrupt, I don't know. I don't know what the right phrase is. Anyway, if you have the means to play this game on a Game Boy Micro, that's my favorite way to play it. You'd have to use a Game Boy Flash card if you wanted to play it in English. But when this game first came out, and I didn't know if there was going to be an English translation, I actually finally bit the bullet and learned Japanese, at least enough to read this game. So I'm going to name the main character. I'm not going to play on this. I'll play on a big TV, but I love the music in this game. Where's my microphone? Yeah. It's so pretty. But yeah, so I have printouts of this character naming screen, which I'll show you on the big screen. I have printouts of that I used to learn to read hiragana and katakana. And, the way I played through the game the first time was whenever I encountered a word I didn't know, I would write it down in a notebook. And I can't find that notebook, and I'm so sad, because I would write down the notebooks, I would write down the word in Japanese, and then I would go and look it up, and I would try and figure out what it meant. And it's a crude way of self-translating a game, and it took forever, but I made it through it after like a year. And it's a super charming game, but then it came out in English, and I played through it again. And that was sort of without question a defining, I don't know, I guess a defining moment. I don't know how to word that, but the English patch for this game came out a couple weeks after my son was born, my first kid, and so I would be laying awake at night because you, as a new parent, you're always awake, and I was just sitting with him, and he'd be asleep on my belly or whatever, and I would be playing the game on a Game Boy Micro and in English, finally, and there's just a lot of like parent drama early in the game that I'll sort of talk about or show, and it's just a really like charming, like strong memory of mine. So anyways, here's the English version of this game. This was patched, as I mentioned, by the Starmen.net community. The patch came out in 2008, 2 years after the game was first released. I'm not going to play too much of the intro of this game because it gets a little more interesting a little bit later. Is the audio okay? All right. The older twin brother, an energetic boy. Oh wait, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to reset. Because this was another thing that I did when I first played this with my kids, was I named the kids what I would eventually name my real kids, which was kind of charming. And then I named the parents after me and my wife, which makes some of the story beats really, really heartrending, I guess. Which was one of the words that Itoi used in the official slogan for this game, that it's like, I think it was charming, funny, and heartrending, I think were the 3 words he used to describe it. So yeah, so I named the older boy, or the younger boy, after my son, Joe, and I named the other brother after what would become my daughter's name, Margot, because I thought it would be funny to give him a girl's name. Although he ends up having some issues, so I felt kind of bad, like maybe I caused them by naming him a girl's name. And their beloved mother, Jess. Brave and smart dog. You get to name a dog again. The dog plays a much more significant role in this game than he did in Earthbound. Favorite homemade food is always pills. Favorite thing. We'll keep this Double Fine train running. I could spell the whole thing, but I'm not gonna. 6 characters is all I need to express my love. Text speed, fast, window color. I'll go with strawberry. Also, I've listened to that Name Your Character music for a long, long time. I love that song. So this game definitely doesn't take place in the same universe as the first two, but it takes place on this quaint little island where people don't have currency, they trade in favors and they barter items, and then a corrupting agent, who is Porky, your neighbor from the previous game, who has been time traveling and is crazy and basically he's a ruined bad man. He shows up and he starts corrupting this tiny world, and that's what you're dealing with. Essentially, that's the bulk of what Mother 3 is. It's also got some of the most beautiful sprite work I've ever seen in a 2D game. Which a lot of this all the sprite work was done by a development house called Brownie Brown, which is a team of ex-Squaresoft people who, for the most part, worked on Secret of Mana, which, if you know me, is also one of my favorite games. So this game basically having the people who made Earthbound and the people who made Secret of Mana doing the art, it was sort of lined up to be something that I'd be super into. Yeah. One thing that's interesting is a lot of these, even the early scenes in this game, you see glimpses of in various, I'm gonna look at myself in the mirror. You see glimpses of it in various Earthbound 64 or the Mother 3 for Nintendo 64 footage or screenshots. My mom says I need to put on my PJs. Anyway, this game took a whole lot less time for me to fall in love with it, but as I mentioned, I was sort of expecting to, so it was easy. But yeah, I'm really into the palettes everywhere. I'm really into the animation. I love some of this like humor. I can talk to the pigs. It says oink oink, but the pig next to me says worries me. Oink, don't worry about it. Like just odd stuff. A story is a series of memories. Oh, I'm talking to a frog. Memories are remembered with other memories, and in turn become memories themselves. If you don't take care to preserve your memories, you'll forget them. So please tell us, frogs, your memories of everything so far. That is what people refer to as saving. Now then, Sebuda? Yes. That one. Sorry, I have a save much later in the game that we're going to check out in a minute. Anyway, so that's basically how this game starts. I want to show, I'm going to skip a couple more little pieces, just real fast. So we have a save right here near the end of the first chapter of this game that I think is super important, because it goes back to what I was saying about the sprite work being some of the best ever.
Too good. Do you know where the decision came to be like, let's cancel it, but let's put it on the Game Boy Advance? Like, how did that happen?
So it's not really clear. So they announced, so they made this Mother 1+2 port, which is Mother 1 and 2 ported to the Game Boy Advance. Itoi's team was working on that, and it was during that time that they approached him to port it to the Game Boy, to recreate Mother 3 on the Game Boy Advance. And he sort of did some soul searching. Like, he had wanted to make this like his like blockbuster movie opus, and he ended up accepting it and saying that, like, I guess I'll make the play version of that. So he treats the Mother 3 that we got as a small play version of his idea. But I actually like it probably a whole lot more than I would a 3D version of Earthbound, just because, like, those trailers that we have now, like, look pretty grungy, and this game, I think, will stay pretty for a long, long time. So this should be a save right near the end of chapter 1, which this is one of those moments where I was referring to. I'm sitting in bed. Yeah, so I'm sitting in bed with my son, and I'm walking around. You know that your kids are missing. During a night of a big fire. Your kids are missing, and then these people tell you they found them. So you're still looking for your kids and your wife. So here I walk up, and I love the way that this scene is sort of handled. But I was just sort of, you start, as a parent, I started to put myself in this situation. As sort of silly as it is, you know, this is an island with dinosaurs and things like that. But just the way that they animate some of these motions in this segment are so good. Like the kids shivering, I think that's an adorable little detail. There's monsters, scratchings everywhere. Talk to this guy. It's good to worry about your parents. That's how we grew up to be adults after all. Like, ha 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 ha. So they were worried about their mother too, so they ran off to go find her. Margot says, ... Joe says, Dad? Seems they both fell into the river and got washed downstream, poor little things. It's burning intensely. By the way, I didn't do anything to trigger that. I think it's just a time-based thing. So this guy runs up, and he's like, hey, so he's got something important to say. Ben, I'm not sure what to say, but just stay calm and hear me out. I have good news and I have bad news. Which do you want to hear first? No, let me start with the good news first. So the good news is I picked up a giant Drago Fang, which is like you met a Drago earlier, it's like a dinosaur. It'll make for a great weapon. I figured you could probably use it. I was like, that's great news. What's the bad news? As for the bad news... Dramatic pause, dramatic pause. The bad news is, it's where I found the Drago Fang. It was in your spoilers. It was pierced through your wife's heart. And I'm just sitting here thinking, like, oh God, like this guy's just been told that his kids are orphans, that his wife is dead. And then this animation plays. He punches the ground, which is a really well-acted bit of 2D sprite work. And he sort of just freaks out. People are trying to comfort him. None of it works. And yeah, and I had already played this game through in Japanese, as I mentioned, but I hadn't played it at like the flow of reading a story. So when this came up, again, when I was playing through it in English for the first time, just with my newborn son sleeping, it was just like, yeah, anyway, I won't forget it. But yeah, they made a lot of, this game, I think is actually one of the more amazing sprite-based games because there's a ton of animation that only plays in one place, and it doesn't loop. Like, none of these, you never see any of these animations again, you know, like struggling and things like that. It's all super, super one-off, and I love the craftsmanship of that kind of thing. It's actually one of the reasons that I wanted to come to Double Fine, because we tend to do a lot of that stuff here. And if there is a Western company who's capable of making a game like this, I think this is it. With our value for animation and art and storytelling. So this is him remembering the last time he saw his wife and kids together. So anyway, so that's the sort of bummer part. So anyway, this will be the last segment I'm going to show from these games. One thing that I wanted to bring up too was I mentioned that Double Fine could make a game like this, and it's funny, when I interviewed at Double Fine, which was a little over 2 years now, 2 years ago now, someone asked me what my favorite game was, and I said Mother 3. And I think it was Anna was in the interview, and she gave like this gasp, like that was a surprise, and she's like, Tasha, oh, Tasha. And I'm like, what? Who's Tasha? And I knew who Tasha was. Tasha used to be she was an animator here. She now works at Pixar, but she was the project lead on Costume Quest 1. And apparently this, either this or Earthbound, I'm not sure which, were her favorite game. And I think they really liked that there was someone on staff who loved these games. So that's why I got the job, and the only reason why I got the job. Here, I'm going to try and remember how to beat this boss real quick. Use my PK define. This guy's going to use items. So this is much later in the game. You've got a bunch of friends now. They're all helping out. I've always named Kumatora, who's the girl with pink hair, I've always named her Tonks. I like Harry Potter also. Sorry, I'm trying to remember what to do. All right, Sai, I need to use Sai, I need to attack, I need to use PK freeze. And this guy needs to use items. This boss, you can lose this boss fight pretty easy. This is the end of chapter 5 in the game, so you've sort of been exploring a lot. But I think it should be alright if I just don't forget what I'm doing. This guy needs to use Pencil Rocket. Batman's gonna die if I don't heal him. And Batman needs to use a saltwater gun, which is the most powerful item against robots. Sorry, let me just get through this section, because I want to show you the entirety of Chapter 6, which isn't very long. This game, it's cut into 8 chapters. The first one is, reasonably long, and then they stay at a reasonable length, and then you get to the 6th chapter, which is extremely short, and a lot of people who don't like to read books, I guess, and don't understand pacing, got real upset that they got sort of gypped on this chapter. But really thoughtful, good people know that it's the best chapter in the game. Calling you guys out. So anyway, when I interviewed, I mentioned that this was my favorite game, and like during AF this past year, I pitched working on a game like this, and since then I've been working on Costume Quest 2, which is kind of a lot like this game. It's similar in tone. It's probably, I would say it goes less dangerous into sort of the sad parts of the brain, but it's got a lot of the same sort of charm about kids sort of trying to take down larger-than-life problems. Does he have pencil rockets? Just pencil rockets. All right. Hoping I finish this fight soon, because this guy's gonna destroy me if I don't. Okay. There's a chance that everyone in my party dies right now, but we'll just let it happen. All right. 137 is my favorite number. Attack, PK, double fine. This guy's basically worthless at this point, so yeah, my dog just got hurt and collapsed. If I had been studious with my abilities, or if I'd been quick with my button taps, I might have saved him, but it's okay. Because really, it's up to Joe and Tonks to finish this fight. Just give me a minute. I'm gonna use the tickle stick. Sorry, it'll be over soon, I promise. In one of my test runs for this, I did lose this fight though, and it was super sad, but I think I'm gonna be fine. Oh, in this game, so I'm playing it on an emulator right now, just so I can sort of skip around. This game, I think, really stinks on an emulator. When I mentioned that Earthbound's music's a little screwed up on an emulator, that's true, but this game's even worse, and it's even more important because this game has, especially through the first half, you have to time your attacks to beats of music, which is basically impossible on an emulator unless it has perfect sound emulation, and none of them do. So people have gotten used to it and they get through it, but I really dislike playing the game that way. I think I got a heal. I don't really... I'm gonna keep going. There we go. All right. So now we got through this fight. Now I'm getting pumped. Getting a bunch of experience. Level up music. It's my favorite of the level up music versions. All right, here we go. More cool sprite art. I like those lightnings. Got to evacuate. There's that guy. He's a... So that guy is a member of a band of transsexual beings who protect this world, and he decided to go back to being all male, and I don't know how to word that any better. And he's now a villain. And he's helping corrupt the planet. Let's go up here real quick. Let's finish off this this little bit of story, and then we'll go somewhere really interesting. You pathetic fools. He also has a weird quirk where he eats bananas and throws the banana peels behind him. Like a 1920s comedy routine. He will slip on them someday. But it's not too, it's, okay, so I should talk about him a little bit. So he comes back later in the game. Your old friend Porky from Earthbound, who's the abused child who is basically behind all of this, who's now an old man inside of a robot. So your old friend Porky, his whole deal through this game is creating these chimera monsters, like taking natural things and sort of tainting them, sort of ruining them. He basically came to this universe to ruin it. So he introduces currency, and people start being greedy, and they start building cities and listening to rock music. some of that stuff's good and some of it's bad. But that guy who just fell off the building, Facade, he comes back later and he's been like turned into a weird trumpet elephant who can only speak by honking, which is really silly and also kind of gross. It would be terrifying to me as a kid. Anyway, so I'm hanging on by this rope. It's a jaw-dropping moment. That's what he's about to say. His jaw isn't strong enough to hold on. There's my jaw, it's at its limit. So, yeah, that's our friend the snake. So we fall off this helicopter, and then thus ends Act 5. There's a stranger with a weird helmet there. It's a very large plot point later on. Every chapter in this game is sort of bookended with these little like story moments like this, just little pieces of prose. And we're about to begin chapter 6, which is one of my favorite little pieces of a video game. And I'm gonna spoil it for you. Seriously, play the game if you can. Hopefully Nintendo someday releases it, but I don't think they ever will. This is our Star Wars forced scrolling text moment. The tale now moves to its next chapter, with an almost certain promise of battles far more intense than ever before. So that's that expectation will be subverted. Art majors. Chapter 6 has no battles. Hop. So a frog is asking me if I want to save the game. No. I could have saved the game there and shown just that, but I think that this game with no context and without seeing any of the cool sprite animations and things, this chapter just seems like a weird, dreamy, animated GIF, and I like forcing someone to watch me fight that dumb robot first. It's a field of sunflowers. That's where I landed, apparently. And you can go left or you can go right. Since it's a video game, I'm gonna go right. Which is stupid because you can actually walk right forever. There's no, it just loops. There's no time interruption. Going right is always going to just take forever. And the first time I played, I probably walked for a half hour. Because in Earthbound, there's a point where you're supposed to do something for an unreasonable amount of time. And like there's one part where you have to put the controller down for a few minutes. And I thought that was Itoi subverting that trope. And it sort of is, but you're supposed to eventually give up and go the other way. And even then, you have to go the other way for quite a while before anything happens. So, so this is a chapter in the middle of a role-playing adventure game where you're just told to chill out for a minute and look around at some pretty flowers. The theme that's playing right now is from earlier in the game. It's from your house. So that's apparently a memory from your old house, I guess. I don't remember if it says that or not here. But there's a small sunflower. I can't skip this, it just sits here. But pretty soon after, I regain control and can continue my march left. Anyway, I hope anybody who's watched all this gives these games a try, or at least knows that their Smash Brothers character, that the Smash Brothers characters based on them have a little bit of something going on, and that the games aren't just a weird thing, that they're a thoughtful, like artistically created work. The slogan for the first Mother game when it was released was, what is it? Ending waka nakun janai, or something like that, which is no crying until the end. Which is an interesting sentiment for a Nintendo Dragon Quest clone. Itoy said he's basically never going to work on another one of these, that he's out of stories, but he runs a blog and he posts weird stuff to it, and he interviews like prime ministers and cooks and some guy on the street, and just basically it's a really good, if you want to learn to read Japanese, it's much better than reading an actual Japanese newspaper. Although he calls it his Shinbun, he calls it a newspaper, but it's mostly not news. So here we go, we're going to end chapter 6. We're going to end our run of the Mother series. We're going to all go get some sleep, think about what we saw. So that's the mom sprite. It's a ghost. She's still looking out for us. It's one of my favorite little animations there. As is this that's about to happen. That's her dad. That's your grandfather there in the middle of the screen. Love how that dog falls. It's so cute. And the boy's about to fall, and it's also got some really good little bounce on the haystack. And then you begin this seriously long adventure game, or regular RPG style level. Chapter 7 in this game is basically a whole Final Fantasy game of stuff, and I'm gonna turn it off for now. I don't think I have any other saves to look at. But there you go. And I'm done. So if you want to play Earthbound, you can still buy American cartridges on eBay. They cost way too much. I'll loan you mine as long as you give it back. Or you can buy it for $10 on the Wii U Virtual Console, that's the best way to play these games right now. That's the best way to buy that game right now. That emulator that they have is pretty solid. It doesn't screw up a lot of the sound, and they didn't strip anything out from the US release. So I super recommend the Wii U version. Also, it has this weird side effect where GameStop sells codes to it, so you can actually walk into a GameStop and buy Earthbound. Although they'll just give you, I think they just give you a $10 gift card when you buy it. But that's how that works. It's nice to see it on the shelf. Mother 3, you can learn Japanese, or you can play it on a flash cart. That's the best way to do it. It's getting harder and harder to find Game Boy Advance flash carts, but Nintendo DS, Game Boy Advance slot carts are still pretty easy to get, and the Nintendo DS runs the game perfectly. I really like playing that game on the train or on a boat. I prefer to play it on a handheld than on a TV or on a computer. But if you want, if you have no other option, you can play them on an emulator. Maybe you won't have the best time with Mother 3's combat early on because of that. And I think that's the best way to play. Oh, and Mother 1, Mother 1 you can just play on an emulator. I don't think Nintendo will ever release that in the States. Yeah, and if anybody has an Earthbound 64 beta, please give it to the Starmen guys. They want it really bad. They thought they had some 4 or 5 years ago, I guess, and when the guy finally got around to booting up the 64 DD cartridges, because that game was for the Nintendo 64 DD, they discovered they were mostly just Doshin the Giant, and not the Earthbound 64 demo that they thought they were going to have. So yeah. Also, Mother 1 is an interesting piece of like video game archaeology. I love what like the Lost Levels people do, and which is Frank Cifaldi, I guess, and friends. I love that they managed to rip that game from an original ROM that Nintendo translated and released it for everyone to enjoy, if it's possible. It's possible to enjoy Mother 1. You can do it. You just gotta be ready. You gotta be in the mindset that you're not in a hurry. But I'm just super glad that that game, like that translation eventually came out. When it first came out, everyone just thought that the Demi-Force group, they thought that they'd translated it themselves, but later on it was confirmed by a Nintendo rep that it was the actual US localization. Oh, and don't play Mother 2 for Game Boy Advance. Don't play this version. It's terrible. It has a lot of bugs, and the Mother 1 copy on here is good, but the Mother 2 copy has a lot of bugs, and they had to redo most of the music, and it sounds like garbage. So I have started making my kids play video games. My son is now 5. He's about to turn 6, so that's how long it's been since Mother 3 was translated into English. My wife always criticizes me because I remember dates based on video games, not on other data. But I've started playing Pokemon with my son, and we're working up to an Earthbound playthrough, but I think it still gets too weird and slow in the middle with the battles that I don't think he'd stay interested. These games are so close to my heart that it's really hard for me to think of another game that's quite like it. Yeah, Pokemon's a game that has like the same optimism of your parents have the same optimism in both of those games and Earthbound, but or in all the Pokemon games and in Earthbound, but obviously those games don't go anywhere near the storytelling. Costume Quest is actually a pretty good childlike feel game, but it doesn't get into any of the existential stuff. I think that's it. I think that's about all. I mean, I really can't think of many games like it. That's why I stick to them and play them over and over again. I hope to someday make a game that like feels as good as Earthbound does to so many people. Like someone just this guy Ken something just wrote a book for Boss Fight Books about how that game made him feel. And he first played it when he was 5 years old when the game came out, which is, slightly younger than I was at the time. That game was screwed by its marketing. If you're marketing games, don't make them for like fart and booger crowd, because that doesn't work. And market it on its strengths, which I think you can do now. I think indie games and things have really brought out being able to release a game with a good, like plausible, nice story, and then you tell people that's what it is, and then people will go and buy it. Mother 3 is a touching game. You should play it. Like, I strongly feel you should play it at a point in your life where you're going to remember it for some other reason. I don't know why that is, but I recommend it to all new parents, even though it's clearly got some moms dying in it. I also recommend reading The Road to all new dads to realize just how fragile what you have is. So that's that. Yeah. All right.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, you guys.